We've been talking all week about taking on more, what that looks like, how that can affect an organization or even your career or your outside interests. Today, we're going to talk about what's possible. But before we start, I want you to take a second and imagine what would be possible if you took on one additional thing in your work or in your life. One thing, what might happen? We're going to talk about all that and more coming up on today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Hey, Tom.
Good morning, Bob. How are you today?
I'm good. I had to scramble. When I do the introduction, I try to do something to promote it on LinkedIn Live. And when I do the intro, it cuts my time by 31 seconds. So I have to double time it, and I almost didn't get it done this time. It's kind of a game I like to play.
Fair enough. Good way to start the morning, I guess. Yeah. Challenge yourself.
Yes.
So you have plenty of time when I do the intro.
Mm-hmm. That's why some days I'm just like, oh, go ahead, Tom, you do it. I actually like doing the intros, believe it or not.
Is that supposed to surprise me?
No, not at all.
I can see that. And you're doing very well at it.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, I like those words of affirmation.
I know. We haven't had it today on today's Antidote.
I was close today. I was pretty close.
Sometimes it's hard to do when you've got today in your title. So,
yes.
Anyhow, good morning, everyone, and welcome to, if you didn't realize this, today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast. Each week, Bob and I have a conversation around a topic. This week's topic, as he mentioned, is taking on more. And then each morning, we pick one piece to discuss. So today we're going to talk about what's possible. And as we go through that conversation, if you have thoughts and ideas you'd like to share, please feel free to put them in the comments, whatever social media you might be following us on, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or
LinkedIn Live.
Yes, LinkedIn Live, because we know that that'll add value to our show. And at the end of the conversation, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, our today's antidote, that thing that we hope will help you, maybe today, or maybe somewhere down the road when you're stuck and uncertain and not sure what to do, help you take your next step along your own unique pathway to success. And of course, if you have a one thing you'd like to share, please feel free to share it, because we know that when all of us add our value, someone benefits. And there might be someone listening who appreciates what Bob and I have to say, yet it doesn't strike them the same way that what you would offer does. And so please feel free to share your value, because we know that it will have a difference for someone and help them take their next step. Before we dive into our topic, though, each morning we do our celebrations. So, Bob, what are you celebrating today?
Well, first, Tom, we've got to mention, because we don't do this enough, the reason we celebrate is to get us in the right frame of mind to move into the day, because often we're so busy worrying about the things we haven't accomplished that it's nice to take a moment and just think about the things that are worthy of celebration. So, for instance, last night, you and I were fortunate enough to be able to spend some time together having dinner. I said to someone last night, you and I have only been in the same room for purposes of this endeavor probably 6 or 7 times now. And that over the course of probably the 2 years prior to COVID, before we got started with this and weren't doing anything together, we probably were in a room together 6 or 7 times. And so I always value the time. We had a nice dinner. We talked about some business stuff. We talked about some personal stuff. Well, you didn't. I did. You tried to pawn a piece of furniture off on me, and I didn't accept it. Did I miss anything in the agenda?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay. So that's why I celebrate today.
Excellent. It's a good
and
celebration.
You paid for dinner, even better.
Our business paid for dinner. That's what
there you go. Look at that. Us making money.
Yes. We're spending it. We were spending it last night. So
just so people don't have this vision of us going to like Morton's Steakhouse or something.
There may come a time when that's the appropriate meeting place.
Bring that on.
Certainly. Yes, indeed.
And what celebrate you today?
That's a good question. I am celebrating.
Every day we do this. This isn't that hard.
It's I just choosing which one. There's so much to celebrate. And of course, I would celebrate our dinner together last night. I think that's worth a celebration. And I'll also celebrate this. All right, this is going to be a little bit, I don't know what it is. I'm going to celebrate that I found clarity around a program that I'm going to offer to nonprofit professionals, a roundtable that will bring them together. And I sort of put it all together yesterday, finalizing it today. We'll share some information on it in LinkedIn. And
not live though, right? Just LinkedIn, no live.
I hadn't thought about that. I could go live and talk about it. That would be interesting.
Ooh, I like that. We're big fans of LinkedIn Live.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm celebrating. Some clarity around that program that will launch in mid-September and run through the year. So for those nonprofit professionals who are worried about making year-end goals, have some challenges in front of them, just sometimes feel stuck with what they're trying to do, it's an opportunity for them to take their next step, along with a small group of people who will become a nice community to provide support, accountability, and the value that they each share. That's my.
We'll be hearing more about this over the coming months, right?
We certainly will.
Nice. I love when you get clarity. It's so funny. You have this look of just complete joy when things come into focus for you.
Interesting. It's good to know. All right. So now let's dive into our topic. Taking on more and what's possible. So you sounded like you were all excited about this. So take it away.
Okay. So I think anything's possible. There. All right.
And
we'll be back tomorrow, 7 a.m. Eastern. No. I really do think anything's possible. I've seen it in my own career. I've seen it in other people's careers. I've seen it with organizations. Things that seemed unachievable become more possible when people are willing to take on more. It makes sense, right? If you can accomplish more with the same resources, or if you can accomplish more with less resources, that's a win for an organization, especially in these days when it's really hard to hire and retain employees. It's an employee's market out there. They can pretty much ask for whatever they want if they go to a new job, and they're getting really nice packages. So one of the ways that you can encourage an employee to stay is to give them additional opportunities. And I think that's one of the hidden gems of the current economy that most organizations aren't really factoring in. Wow, this is a chance where we could really have this person take on more. And I know a number of people who have not looked for jobs because it's like, well, they just gave me this new region to manage, or they just gave me this additional opportunity, or, I'm going back to a long time ago. One of my employers cut a deal with me. They'd pay for half of my graduate school if I stayed with them for the next 3 years. That was a really good deal for them. There's no doubt. They locked me down for 3 years. I wasn't mad about it, but it was a good deal for them, and it served my purpose. I was paying for grad school, and they came in and said, we'll pay for half. So I think the creativity around that, and by locking me into that, they also asked me to do more. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really great opportunity. They kept me in that role for another 3 years. I would have left. There's no way I would have stayed. Not a chance. So that's someone really thinking it through. And I think organizations have this opportunity about there's always more responsibility that people can take on. And I think there's times when a leader can let go of responsibilities, like we talked about last week, and that frees them to take on additional responsibilities. And it's sort of a stair step thing. Am I making any sense this morning? I feel like
sure.
I'm okay. All right.
No, I mean, I think there's two sides to it. I think the one side is that, there are enormous opportunities that it's created when you take on more. There's always things that could happen. And as you said, anything could be possible. And I think many times that's the case. is that when we take on more, we feel more connected, more engaged. We feel like there's new opportunities. So why make big changes when these small changes might be just what it takes to stay, to make a situation that is okay better, make a situation that is better even more enjoyable. And then there's the other side. And I think the other side is when we take on more, one of the things that's possible is we can get overwhelmed. And we can struggle to figure out, well, okay, is what I was doing before the priority, or is what I just took on more the priority? I mean, I clearly remember I had an opportunity I had 2 gigs going on. I had a business. I had a second business. I had an activity that I was doing a lot of. And I kind of really enjoyed a product that I was using. And someone approached me and said, hey, you know what? There's an opportunity with this product to help share it with other people and take on some benefit from that. And so I said, that sounds like good. I thought I had some free time. And I think what I realized was that it just was overwhelming. And it was really hard to figure out, what am I going to prioritize? Which comes first? Can I really dedicate enough time to have any of the 4 really get to the point that I would want them to get to? And ultimately, it led me down a path of kind of letting go of one, which allowed me then to really spend more time focusing on the other 3. And I even sometimes feel like I have too much at the time, and that there might even be other things that I could truly let go of, because I was getting in the same situation. Like, what takes priority? Is it more important to do this or more important to do that? And oftentimes when you take on more, it's not always clear, because they both have priorities that need to be done. And a lot of times they show up at the same time. And so I think that, we talked a little bit about it, I think at the beginning of the week, of that does create some challenges that we have to figure out. And I think, anytime that there's an opportunity, I love to say this, there are always obstacles. So often we don't take the time to consider those. We see the value of the opportunities. It's like taking on more responsibilities at work could be great, and it could mean, oh, geez, now when I was leaving at 5, I can't leave at 5 anymore because I just have too many things to do. Or it's believed that I should stay and work longer because I have more now on my plate. And what does that then change? And how does that then impact where we're at? And so I think that it's one of those things that as we start to look at what's possible, I think that question just begs for you to talk about all the really great things that are possible. And which is what I started thinking about this morning, is I'll be interesting to see, like, does Bob go down the 2-sided path, or does he?
It's funny I didn't, because as you know, I've experienced this recently.
Sure.
So I've experienced the prioritizing, and but I'm always the person who's grabbing opportunities. It's just I like new shiny objects. I like additional things, and I get bored easily with things. And so if you constantly are taking on new things, you don't have to ever settle in and really figure out the old things. And I've got a career of that. And it's one of the things I'm really trying to work through now, is how do I not take on more, but take on something fully, not 80% or 60%, or when it fits in.
Well, and I think that's the challenge when you take on more, right?
Yeah.
Is it becomes really hard to prioritize that this is the thing that I'm going to, if I had to choose, this is number 1 priority. And then I had to choose, okay, what comes second? And then being able to stick to that when whatever is second, third, or fourth on the priority list steps up and has something that becomes a priority. I mean, it's a challenge. It's just one of those, and I think that,
and it's not just work stuff. I mean, that's the other part of this, that, when you talked about if you take a different role and you're not leaving at 5 o'clock, that has an implication for other aspects of your life. You may not be able to exercise as much. You may not be able to play softball or bridge or see your friends for happy hour on Friday afternoon. Yeah, big bridge. I don't understand how to play bridge, but I hear people.
Interesting that it popped up that was the card game that you came up with.
I did play Uno a couple weeks ago.
It's not really a card game.
Uno's not a card game. Well, you're into that poker stuff.
Yes, indeed.
So I don't get that excitement except when I say LinkedIn Live. That was interesting.
I just think that's one of the things that we don't often consider, because I do believe that when we hear the comment or the question, what's possible, it's very easy to think of all of the amazing things that could happen when we take this on. You take on a new responsibility at work, and of course you think, oh, well, the supervisors, the bosses are going to love me because I'm going to take this on and I'm doing more. And I think that's true until it isn't, until you're taking on and doing more, and it's not done as well as it used to be done. Or
it's not as seamless. There's a learning curve.
Correct. And things start falling behind, or things change, and you struggle to figure out how to prioritize. Because I think, and this goes back a little bit to what we talked about yesterday, are you taking on more of what you're already doing? Like you talked about adding another region. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's similar to, all right, I manage one region, I manage another. It's managing. I understand that. If I'm doing sales and now I'm asked to take on a managerial role, something that I've never done before, I don't think we understand the challenges that creates, and the things that if we've never done it, we're sort of starting from scratch. I mean, anytime someone takes on a leadership role and they've never had one like that, they're trying to figure out, how do I do this? And it's not the same as doing it, especially managing and leading, or taking on a different task that now requires different knowledge, experience, and perspective that you have some of. You don't necessarily have all of it. And, so I think that those are things that, as we think about what's possible, considering what are the obstacles that could get in the way of all those great opportunities that we consider when we think about what's possible.
Is that your one thing?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. All right.
Do you have your one thing?
I do. I think that it's a double-edged sword when we think about what's possible in a different way. And that is that I think it's very easy to either entice ourselves, oh, this is going to be amazing, everyone's going to love me, I've always wanted to do this. And the other side of it is, I'm going to be a complete failure. And I've had those dual thoughts go through my head before I've raised my hand and said, hey, I'd like to do this. And I think that speaks to your point that everything has challenges. I don't always listen to the potential for it falling apart as much as I probably could or should. And I think you're right. I think looking at both sides of the coin is probably a prudent approach to looking at whether to take on more. But I would also say for an organization, so often I've been in organizations where they'll say, yeah, I just don't think he or she can do it because they've never done it before.
Sure.
And I think that never done it before, sometimes that really boxes people in, because I've done things I've never done before and been pretty good at. I've done things I've never done before and not been really good at, but I've learned a lot and the organization's learned a lot.
Well, it's not always clear, I think, to the people who are making those decisions, what someone has done before. Just because you might not have it on your resume. You might not have displayed it because your role didn't call for it. And that doesn't mean that maybe you don't have some experience doing it in the past.
Or the skill set that's necessary. If you, in sales, if you can be analytical and talk to people and be good on the phone, a customer service person could probably, in many cases, become a salesperson. It's a very similar set of skills that you're applying. You're just applying them in a different way.
Sure. No, I like that.
How about you?
So I think my one thing is it ties in a little bit to what I was saying, and I think it's a little different. Is that when we start to consider what's possible, I think it's really helpful if we determine what success looks like. And so that we're kind of clear on progress towards that. One of the biggest challenges, you take on something more, and we never really define how long we think it's going to take before we get to where we want it to be. And so, it's hard to really measure how close aren't we. So if we don't know what success looks like, and we don't have an idea of how long we think it's going to take us to get there, it's really hard to figure out how much progress you're making towards it, and whether it was something that you wanted to take on permanently, or something that you wanted to try, see what it looks like, evaluate it, and then choose whether it becomes permanent or whether it was just a temporary thing that we tried. And I think that, again, it goes back to just not setting unrealistic expectations that, if they're not met, you feel like this was a failure. That word that I hate to use. And I think so often that's what happens, is people take on more, and yet they likely don't, and they see the possibilities, and they likely don't think about, like, okay, how long might it be? Because what we're usually looking at is who else has done this, and look at where they are at, without thinking about all the things that they went through to get to where to where they are now, which is where we would want to be, because we see the success that they've had. And I think so often people don't share those challenges because they want people to succeed and they want them to go. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges with, like, network marketing, is that the people who are usually presenting it are people who have been successful at it. And we see, and the others see the success. And the people who are sharing the opportunity don't want to talk about the challenges that, well, it took this long and this long and this long and this long, because the person will never get started. And yet those are the things that sometimes are really important to understand. It's like, hey, yeah, this is not just, you're going to start today and you're going to make $1 million, or you're going to have 1,000 sales. Here are all the things that people typically go through, the challenges that they face, and why many choose not to continue, that it becomes a temporary thing rather than a permanent thing.
And I know you've done this. I've done this with our Renegade Success Network. We've had these discussions with people when they're considering new opportunities, where we're asking them the questions around, okay, what are the great things that could happen? That's great. What could stand in your way? What are the implications of this on your personal life, on your existing business career? And really helping people analyze it so that they go into it fully aware. And I know of 2 or 3 cases, people who I worked on with that, and they chose not to. Sure. After that discussion. That they saw the opportunity, but they also saw the limitations and the challenges it would bring, and said, yeah, that's not for me. And in other cases, they've actually jumped at it more eagerly, like, yeah, wow, that was really useful. So I think that's one of the things on Renegade Success Network. We talk about a Renegade Success Network kind of broadly. That's one of the concrete areas that if you're struggling or trying to figure out this whole idea of, should I take on more, or my bosses are asking me to take on more, or I feel like I need to take on more, having that discussion with someone outside of it who can just ask you the kinds of questions that get you thinking in new ways so you can make a more full, holistic decision can be really valuable.
Well, I also think we don't always think about what's the impact. Is this helping us get to where we want to go, or is it just a temporary fix to a current challenge that we're facing, or a current opportunity that's in front of us? I think so often you get offered to take on more in a role that, and what you're taking on doesn't necessarily help you get closer to where you ultimately want to be. Right. It may help, you may get to make more sales, you may get to do something different,
get a raise.
It doesn't necessarily get you to where you want to be. And that's okay. That's as long as you're clear on that choice. I think throughout my career, I made shifts within the same within the same industry took
Right.
a lot of different roles in the nonprofit space, thinking how valuable that would be, that I would have an understanding of all these different areas that I may one day oversee. And yet that's not the trend of people who get hired in those next roles. It's the trend of somebody who's been the long time, really successful annual giving person, major gift officer, that have had a long, steady career in that end up in those roles. And then interestingly enough, they get in, don't have a grasp of many of the other pieces that they are leading, overseeing. And so, I just think it's taking on more, even though I enjoyed it and it gave me a broad perspective. And I think ultimately for where I am now, it makes a lot of sense. It might not have been as helpful as I thought initially.
Wow. A little insight into Tom Brush's career. We don't get that so often. That's a gem, folks. Put that. We're getting some insight into the Tom Brush methodology.
Well, I don't know that I think there's what it's helped me do is learn. I've learned from, and rather than have regrets over what I chose to do, I look at it as what was the value that I gained from that. And funny that in some ways that's more beneficial for where I am now than I think had I followed a different path. So
there you have it.
All right, folks, if you have the one thing that you'd like to share, please feel free to put it in the comments. And if you happen to be listening to the podcast, we know there are no place to comment. So we would invite you to come to our Ringer Renegades Facebook group, where you can share your thoughts and ideas around taking on more and what's possible. And, if you do come in there to share your value, because we know it'll add benefit to someone else, maybe share why you chose to take on more or why you didn't choose to take on more. I think that knowledge, when you share it with someone else, might be really helpful as someone else is trying to consider what's the value of me taking on more. And, what are the possibilities within that? So we look forward to seeing you inside our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, or we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern time for Bob's favorite show of the week.
Yes, Discoveries of the Week.
We will share our discoveries of the week. So you might want to also think about what are your discoveries of the week, because you can share it with us during our show, or you can go inside the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. There'll be a post, and you can share your discoveries of the week that will likely maybe become a really helpful discovery for somebody else. So we look forward to seeing you then.
Oh, you didn't say have a great.
Go on, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Then I say, embrace the renegading you. It's worth it.
It is worth it. There is no doubt.
Pavlovian, Tom. We've already talked about that.
All right, everybody. Go out and make it a great day. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.